Everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my good buddy Reino. Say hi to everybody, Reino.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
Reino is a buddy of mine just from only a few years back. I'm sorry, a few decades back. Yeah, somebody from the old barrio, from the old high school, and good times, adventures, and disturbing stories. So true.
True story.
True stories. But we're here to talk a little bit today about Reino, someone that I've been keeping tabs on, like we all do in social media, keeping tabs on a good buddy that's really been living life full throttle in his tenacity for following his passion and his dream, and also being a catalyst for others to come clean with themselves and how they really can be expressing in the world, be free from their demons, and also invite in the next chapter of life. That, wow, what if like I'm filtering life not through these previous filters, in this next chapter of life I can embark kind of set free with complete availability, and bring all this life experience to the table, but fresh, open, again, available and free to inviting what's supposed to be unfolding next. When I'm up here touching on Rain, I'm hitting 49. You're 1 year back from me, right? 2 years back from
Yeah,
me.
coming up on 47, so a couple
47.
months away. Yeah.
Oh man, there's things I could tell you that are coming up in a couple of years as you get close to 50. Things you don't want to know start in the books. Surprise me. Just surprise me. But maybe share a little bit with everybody about what you're up to in the world these days as a chef, and in relationship with life, and your lady, and yeah, just maybe give people a taste of that. And then I like to jump back in time and talk a little about what type of individual you were growing up, and how to, some of the experiences along the way. We'll skip the high school chapters, maybe. We'll see.
Well,
We'll see
if there was ever a time that I was grateful that we didn't grow up with social media and digital photography, you might come across a photo here and there in a shoebox, but there's no actual digital records of it. So,
oh yeah, thank God for that.
Double-edged sword, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Glenn, thank you so much for having me here, and just giving me an opportunity to kind of share my story of where I've been and where I've gone, and it's been a crazy ride since we've seen each other. Always grateful to see you. So again, thanks for having me. It's been quite a journey. I've now surpassed 20 years of being a chef. I remember when I started cooking back in 2000, I had talked to a gentleman who was a chef for 15 years, and I thought to myself that I thought it was absolutely amazing that anybody could do one particular thing for 15 years. Whereas now, here I am, coming up on 22, almost 23 years of being a chef. A majority of that time has been a freelance personal chef. So I have spent time in restaurants and catering businesses, but a majority of the time has been spent working on individual projects and that sort of thing. The last 10 years before the pandemic was primarily focused on work as a tour chef. So I was traveling with today's top musicians as they traveled across the country. We'd be doing 26, 27 cities every couple months. And my strength really started just becoming, finding myself in different cities, figuring out what they had, what we had to do, feeding people for months at a time, just really kind of giving these celebrities the experience of feeling like they're at home while they're on the road doing their thing. And so I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity. And I'm a big fan of traveling anyways. So to have travel, music, and food all in the same vicinity was something I'm truly grateful for. The other work that I was doing for a while, in addition to large events here in the Bay Area, home, is I got called on to do a bunch of yacht chef work. So I was going out to the Caribbean and to Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, Florida, and just getting to cook on vessels from 95 feet up to 130 feet. Having people pull out, fresh mahi, fresh blackfin tuna. Here you go, chef, figure out what to do with it. And so now when I'm here at home and I have a purveyor telling me like, oh, here's the freshest you're going to get, it's like, maybe the second freshest. But it's all just kind of given me these amazing experiences to not only just experience cooking, cuisine elsewhere. In between my work trips, I would do a lot of traveling on my own, a lot of times based on food, so I can learn different cuisines to present to my clients. But it really just gave me an opportunity to grow, travel, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, but growing up here in the Bay Area, I kind of felt like I didn't know how spoiled we were. I kind of felt like everybody had a city, a mountain, a beach, a wine country, all that stuff. And then when I started traveling out of the state, it was one thing. When I started traveling out of the country, it was another. And every time I came back home, it's like I got to see this place in a different lens. And I would start coming back, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, now I'm starting to see why so many people come to the Bay Area. And now all of a sudden, paying $8 over the Golden Gate Bridge doesn't hurt as much, because now I can go over the Golden Gate Bridge and go like, wow, this is really my home, right? I get to live in a place that people vacation to. I just to kind of bring this whole thing full circle is I am still majorly involved in the food business. We're starting to pick back up after this whole COVID thing. But as you know, we've all had to pivot, and there's been a lot of curveballs since this whole pandemic started. And about a month or two before the world shut down, I had found my new little comfy hole in the wall here in San Rafael, California. But I also needed an outlet beyond food. I needed a hobby. I needed to fulfill one of my other passions, and that was always photography. I always had, the latest smartphone. I'd find myself in beautiful areas, point and click, share the picture. But I loved photography, and I knew that I'd never have an actual camera with me. But about 2 months before the pandemic, I went and I finally got a camera. I started studying tutorials on how to actually take good photographs. And then the world shut down on me, and it said, you know what, before you get a chance to hit the road again, you're actually going to spend a little bit of time at home. And so the past 2 years, I've actually been swept up in this whirlwind of landscape photography. And it's gone from a hobby into a beautiful website that I've built. And next thing you know, last holiday season, I started selling a number of prints. And now I'm finding myself, up on Mount Tam before the sunrise, getting kicked off by the Rangers after sunset, and really just exploring a whole nother soul feeding.
You're still getting kicked off the mountain?
Right, still getting kicked off.
We were getting kicked off the mountain back in the day. So.
Right. And this time, all I have is a camera in my hand, not a whole bunch of empty cans. But it's a lot different now. I remember we used to be sitting there watching the sunset, and blue sky, watch the sunset. If the fog rolled in, we thought it ruined our day. And next thing you know, I'm up there chasing low fog. I'm up there wanting those kind of conditions. And again, it's all just a different perspective thing, to know that I grew up in such a place like this, and now I get to see it with a whole different set of eyes.
How beautiful. And the fog that rolls in is just incredible. So I'm excited for how would people get a hold of your to just check out some of your landscaping shots? Where were they?
Well,
just jumping ahead here, but
right. Well, the thing that I've been putting the most energy in lately is my photography website, which you can find at reinocruzphotography.com. That's REINOCRUZ photography.com. Of course, if we're dealing with images, we have to be on Instagram, so you can catch me there at Reino Cruz Photography. And also, there's a Facebook page at Reino Cruz Photog.
Reino Cruz Photog.
Yeah.
Wow. So to find something that you probably were already taking pictures, just for kicks back in the days, is now like you're just, thank God for COVID, I guess, gave you an opportunity to really lean in and explore that.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying is when I started leaving more and more, I found myself missing home more and more. So when I'm on the road for 7-8 weeks at a time, I'm missing the Bay Area. Then I'd get back to the Bay Area. I'd say, okay, you know what? I'm going to stick around at home for a little bit. Let's get settled in. About 2 or 3 weeks into that, I start getting that little itch. I start, thinking about how fun it is being out and about. All of a sudden the phone rings. Hey, can we put you on the road for 2 more months? And, any of us, we can do anything for 2 months. So about 11 years ago, I said that I was going to be doing this for 2 or 3 years. And then a decade later, you're kind of going, wow, okay, we're still doing this, which is totally fine. I mean, obviously that's part of the journey, but it was this past time right before the pandemic that I had gotten home, gotten settled in. And right before I had that opportunity to maybe say, hey, we're going out again, it just wasn't even my choice. It just shut down all around me. So luckily I got shut down in such a beautiful place.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably one of the few, of us Marin brats, that grew up Marin. Like everybody who really grew up in that part of town, our generation moved to Petaluma,
Right. Right.
if they
Or
stayed
much further. Yeah. Yeah.
further. Yeah, and
Yeah.
how does someone like yourself, it just seems to be, you're not the only talented chef out there who's like, I'm going to go travel the world, somehow falling in. You've got a comedic share with life, and here you are working with top musicians and pulling fresh fish from the ocean
Uh-huh.
and living the dream. Like how did you fall into that? Like or how did that kind of slap you across the face, so to speak? That's
Right. Right.
opportunities, because I think that's what a lot of people who are talented chefs in restaurants would dream of an opportunity like that. Like wouldn't even know where to begin.
Right. Well, when it comes to how I first found my way into that world of the tour industry, I love to tell people that it's an absolutely amazing story how it took place. When in actuality, it was kind of one of those right time, right place things. You just kind of network, you make connections. All of a sudden, somebody asks you to maybe fill in for this one day, and then you just kind of start meeting people, and you make yourself available for that. Um, as simple as that sounded, I know that there were a lot of components that actually went into that process. And for me, a lot of it was, again, just exploring, networking, making myself available to it, having conversations with people, uh, not necessarily sticking within my bubble, talking to complete strangers, uh, getting out of my comfort zone. The yacht chef work that I got, we were on a ferry over to the Bahamas. We were having rum and cokes with my group. A gentleman was by himself over to my left, sparked up a conversation with him. Next thing you know, an hour and a half later, we're exchanging information. He was the chef of a yacht. He knew that I toured in the music industry. He said, if I'm in Florida, give him a call. I said, if you ever need a chef on a boat, you give me a call. And 5 years later, he asked me if I knew anybody that wanted to go cook in the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas for 3 months. So it was just kind of an organic conversation that led to something like that. The tour industry came, a really good friend of mine, Gray Rollin, who I eventually opened a restaurant with. He was involved in the tour business, and the company that he worked for was looking for extra hands. So I kind of went in there. He then left to become personal chef for Lincoln Park. I kind of slipped into his spot there and was able to, really kind of grow with that company for a while.
Yeah.
And that just, led to more and more opportunity. And so it just kind of grows from there by just being present, putting in the effort, knowing that it just takes the work. And then as far as longevity, that's pretty much how the opportunities presented themselves. Now, a big kind of milestone and point in that whole realm is the fact that I had hit a couple bottoms during that time. And each one of those bottoms I really needed to get to that next chapter, that next point.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. It's no surprise that in the food and service industry, there's a lot of enjoying life. There's a lot of drinking. There's some drugging. There's all that stuff. There's late nights. There's making cash. There's crazy hours. There's fatigue. There's all that chaos that we really kind of settle into, and we kind of thrive in it in ways. But for some of us, it just gets to the point where you get to that one day where you wake up and you realize that although you seem to be doing what everybody else around you is doing, you're dealing with a different circumstance in here, and you're actually making life a lot harder than it has to be. And when I got to my bottom, when it first came to drugs and alcohol, it wasn't the first time that I felt that bad. It wasn't the first time that I had consequences. But it just was the first time that I ran out of duct tape. I was always able to kind of hold it together. I was always able to continue being successful. I continued having opportunities. But there was a point where I would make sure that I shared all the wonderful things I was doing with everybody, because I needed to hear their affirmations and almost envy in what I was doing to give myself value in what I was doing. Right. I
Very externally focused.
Right. Exactly. I was expecting the outside to fix the inside. And so that's really critical in my growth, because I don't know if I would have continued doing what I was doing if I would ever gotten to the point where I got to today. The other quick milestone before we focus too much on the sobriety aspect is once I got sober, I continued with my career path as being a chef. But I got to a point where I realized that it was time for me to check my motives as far as why I was doing things. And I started becoming a little bit miserable doing something I've always loved doing. Working in the food service industry became stressful. I became resentful. My short temper started coming back. Everything just kind of felt like kind of an impending doom kind of feeling, but I was still good at it, right? I was still good at living in that chaos. And I just woke up one morning and I said to myself, hey, you know what? We're not being true to ourselves. And at that point, I had decided, hey, you know what? The focus of this thing is your creativity and getting that creativity out and sharing who you are through your travels, through your experience, through your food, and sharing that with the rest of the world. And the only way you're going to do that is by being true to yourself. So that day I made a decision that I was going to do my food my way and take the projects that felt right to me. I was going to ride or die with this.
Hell yeah,
I mean, I could have literally drove straight into a brick wall with this thing.
right.
But what ended up happening was the food stopped coming.
So would you say, now, as much as that was like a choice or decision, was it like the only choice or decision at the time? Like rolling through, it's like I have to ride or die. Like I have no choice. I'm dying doing this way of living. Like I'm not living this way. I have to go this. This is my crazy direction. I've got to go. Like, do you feel like it was almost like flowing through you as much versus so? Yeah, there was an acknowledgement of a choice, a decision was being made that I was going to do my stuff and my way, but it was like this, like pretty loud, like this isn't working. Loud, like I've got to do this, and nobody else, even if nobody else understands, and if it's uncomfortable for them to watch, and it's uncomfortable for me to even watch, I still have to do this.
Right. One of the loudest things that I heard on my road to recovery and getting sober was there was a moment where I was reading a part of our book where it talks about when we get to that certain point, we stop and we ask for inspiration and an intuitive thought or a decision. Okay, up until that point, I figured that in order to get more done, I needed to move faster. I needed to be one of these greyhounds running around trying to do as much as I could. And that was one of the first times that anybody even gave me an insight that maybe I might be more productive or get more done or make a better choice if I slow down just for a moment. And so in asking for that inspiration or intuitive thought or decision, I had to focus on why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. My bills were getting paid. I had a job. Things seemed like they were going okay, but I wasn't being able to use that creativity aspect of it. So they call it a gut feeling for a reason, right? If we go against that gut feeling, we continue to kind of feel it. And now I have this way that I can harness my decisions through my soul and figure out what my motives are. And is this something that I feel good or not good about? And I've gone against that numerous times, and I won't get too far at that fork in the road before I go, wait, I think I was supposed to go that way. So when it came to this, the food stopped coming from here. The food started coming from here.
Right.
So now all of a sudden I become this genuine chef that's doing what he truly feels he should be doing. And surprisingly, Glenn, the phone started ringing more.
Right.
And I started getting the opportunities.
Like you're in flow, you're manifesting things. Like I'm going to let go and trust that I do my part, universe will do its part.
Right. Right. I'm cared for. And the thing that I get reminded of over and over again is that I'm actually fine right now. Like I'm okay right now.
Right.
It's only when I start getting in my head and start declaring what's good and bad and what should be and what shouldn't be.
Right. You start labeling and simplifying those things and then determining kind of like this parallel path that you'd been on before, which is the have to path versus like, this is just what is wanting to happen.
Right.
What's on, like, I could just stop being in my head, drop in my heart space and connect with all, the intelligence of the body. The body has all this intelligence that's wanted to yield me away from the path of the have to a parallel path that lights me up, that spirals up in this creative way.
And just knowing that, right? Just the mindfulness of what you just said is so much bigger than that quick sentence that you just said. I mean, when I speak to groups, sometimes I will be fine days before I speak, hours before I speak, minutes before I speak, 30 seconds before I speak. What am I going to say? Don't forget to say that. Make sure, blah, blah, blah. And what I'll do is the moment I start speaking, I will acknowledge it to take the power away from it. And I will introduce myself and I will say, just to let you know, for the next 30 seconds, I'm going to try to go from here to here. And they always notice the difference because I know that I'm up here, but the fact that I'm mindful about it, I've acknowledged that I've taken the power away from it. And all of a sudden you and I can just start having this conversation again.
Yeah.
The thing that always cracked me up was when I was first told, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where the file of like, oh, that didn't go to plan. You know, that file's gotten pretty big.
Yeah,
So
it's
now,
all that prep stuff and all that nonsense of like, I got to hold to the script. It's so important that I give this information to people, or I've got to accomplish this. And, you know, I need to check these boxes here, but you know, all that's great in getting ready for something, showing that you obviously care to
right,
help people be successful and get value. At
right,
the same time, you know, just like when you're cooking, it's like, you got to be like, all right, here's what we need to do. And then here's what's, you know, like be in the moment and like, here's the dance.
right,
And
right,
same thing with talking. It's like, you know, we're not reading a script right now. It's just like what needs to flow through, and just trust that the words will come and the feelings will be guiding things. But, you know, like, oh shit, I know there's something I need to say today. You know, it's like
yeah,
you need to, but no one
right.
else is gonna really miss out.
Right. Yeah. Well, when we share our stories, sometimes it's like I always heard that there were three shares. There was the share that you want to give, there was the share that you actually give, and then there was the share that you wish you would have given. You know, it's like immediately as soon as the microphone gets put down, you're like, oh, I should have said this and that. Whereas the times that I've spoken and felt the most uncomfortable, or felt that I missed the most, or I felt like I maybe wasn't at my best or whatnot, are always the times where I get the best feedback.
Right.
You know, it's always like, as soon as I fit my standards, it's not necessarily what other people needed at that moment. You know, we might touch on it a little bit later, if not, whatever. But my culinary career, again, being available for things, it got me to the point where I had an opportunity to go and do some competing on Food Network. And I got to do a couple episodes of a competition show with Guy Fieri called Guy's Grocery Games. And again, I won't spoil it for anybody who's going to watch it, but let's just say that the one episode where I might have done better than the other, the one where I maybe didn't do as great, received so many more accolades and so many more people reaching out, kind of talking about how my experience and the things that I shared really kind of helped them a lot more than, again, what Reino's idea was.
Right.
of what was success and what turned out the way that he wanted.
Well, because at the end of the day, we all want your presence. We want to feel you. We just want to be with you.
Right.
If you'll just show up and be here now in the unfolding, and trust whatever is going to happen, versus trusting that something that you've concocted in your head, you know, it's going to leave you one foot in here, you know, one foot out. It just doesn't feel good. You know, it just feels off.
No, and as many times as that's happened in our decades and decades walking this earth, I still have an ego that makes me believe that I need to walk into a situation with my narrative, and then I have to do what I can to express my narrative to you, so that you see my narrative the way that I intend it. Right. When in actuality, like you said, the scripts are out the window. You and I are just sitting here, you know, shooting the shit, and all of a sudden there's something that exudes that no amount of preparation would be able to exude.
Right. So instead of, hey, I don't really want to be with you right now, but I want my narrative to hang out with your narrative, and let's see what the hell they do, versus if we could just put that aside,
absolutely,
and be real, and see, that's where the magic happens. And that's where like, just when you're taking just amazing photos, like you're like, I ain't making the fog roll in like this.
Right.
This is happening right now. I was planning on getting some sunny shots.
Yeah.
And look at the magic that's unfolding right now. And that's, as a chef, I can imagine, you know, when temperatures heat up in a pan, kitchens get busy, and you know, I mean, the restaurant environment is, you know, I know what it's like to be on the other side of, like, we've been waiting like 17 minutes. You know, like, why is he taking, what are those extra 3 minutes going to do to my experience?
Right. And you know, there have been a number of times, you know, whether or not I have a wedding of 200 sitting out in the dining room and my oven decides to stop working, you know, nobody cares that my oven stopped working, you know, but that's where the professional aspect comes into it, where you just need to figure out how to get it done. Or if I have a client that brings me down to Cabo San Lucas, and my job is to specifically take care of all their culinary needs. They're just going to vacation, and it's my job to go and figure out the pesos, the dollars, the grams to pounds, the freshest seafood and produce and all that stuff. And so I'm dealing with all this stuff, um, stuff that, like you said, you're not going to see, and I don't want you to, you know, have to see that.
Right.
And you know, over the years, the only reason why I know to use a dry towel to grab a hot handle to not get burned is because I've grabbed that handle before. And no matter how many times I tell you to use that towel for that handle, you're not going to learn that lesson as much until you grab that handle. So there have definitely been a number of times where I have been convinced that this is going to be the one that breaks me. That oven's not working. 200 people out there, 20 minutes to go, and somehow I made it through. And I can sit here in front of you today on this video chat, and I can tell you, guaranteed, as with you, we have made it through everything we faced.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? I was just climbing Devil's Tower in Wyoming a week ago, and I fell on one of the first pitches, and I fell, I don't know, it was like 10, 15 feet, something, and I smashed my knee into the wall really hard. And, the whole day is going to be climbing these pillars of shoving your knee into these deep cracks. And my guide, thank God, he's just like, you good? Keep moving. It's like, no time to fret about it. You can bitch about it when you get to the car later. But
right.
It's like, keep moving forward. I was like, next crux, next challenge, next thing, and everything's happening so fast in there, just like a kitchen. Everything happens so fast. It's like, I think this is the thing that's going to break me. And like, I just, but I'm doing this to expand my capacity. I'm doing this to stretch myself. And I want to learn this without that hot handle.
Right.
I'm sorry to say it, but we all need to go out and deliberately get after some potential hot handles. So
right. And I love what you said right there about I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but it had to do with what I got from it was it had to do with expanding your ideas, expanding the way that you were looking at that. And that's something that I continually have to do, is I continually try to remind myself that right now, here at this very moment, I'm carrying around my experiences up until this point, which are trying to help me develop what could happen and what will happen, and it's trying to make those decisions. If you would have asked me 9 years ago when I first got sober, what I wanted my life to look like in 9 years, I would have only been able to write you a list of the ideas and concepts that I had at that time, right? And when I look back at what my life has become over the past decade, I have been blessed with more opportunity than I would have ever saw coming. I never really asked to, go to the Caribbean and work on a boat. I never asked to become a photographer that's going to have a print coming out in a magazine soon. I never got asked to do a lot of this stuff, but I experienced it. I participated. I made myself available for it. And I was present for those situations to happen, right? Again, going back 9 years ago, it would have been just very focused on a very small amount of energy of what I wanted at that time. But like you were saying is, okay, this thing happened to my knee. This is probably where I'm at. This is what I believe is going to happen. And it took another voice to kind of tell you, all right, we're going to keep going.
It's like, yeah, but.
Right.
We were climbed, it was a year ago, middle of winter, climbing if you've ever been to Boulder, they've got these 3 flat irons, and I've been looking at them for decades. I'm like, hey, anybody ever climbed all 3 of these? And I called this guide up and asked him that, and he's like, you a climber? I'm like, no. I'm like, and then I'm like, yeah, he's like let's go do it. I went and climbed these things, and right when we got started, early morning, I think we were climbing, I think it was 7 in the morning till 7 or 8 at night, and 35 mile per hour wind, dark, cold night in the evening, but ice and snow during the day, and 50 pitches, 10 miles of hiking around these things. And the first pitch up this thing, I remember just like going, there's nowhere to grab. Why did I tell anyone I was doing this thing? Why did I con this guy into telling him I'm a climber? I'm this big guy, that, a bunch of Asian people go, Godzilla's coming when I come
Right.
around, like not meant to be on a rock. And I froze for about 15 minutes. And then he's like, are you coming? And then finally I'm like, yeah, as soon as I figure out how to do this, he's like, stick your butt out, and I stuck my butt out. I'm like, oh, okay. And I figured this thing out, and I climbed up to where he was at, and I sat down all proud. I'm like, I did it. Like, no, I got through the hot handle piece, and I sat down and had like 2 seconds of like sitting at the big table with the cockiness of like, yeah, I freaking did it. And he's acknowledging that I did it. And I was bad at, he's like, I was surprised there. At first I was worried about you, but then you just started crushing it. And then I took the main piece off my harness and I went to clip it on, and then both of us are looking at this thing that goes like up in the air and it goes over the trees. And I'm like, what was that? And then I look over, I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, that main piece? I'm like, it didn't clip when I clipped it in. And he looked at me, reached over his pocket. He's like, this is the last one I have. And I'm like, wait, we're at the start of the day here. And I just lost the main piece. And I'm like, and he just turns around nonchalant. And he's like, I'm going to go lay trad for the next section and the next pitch. And he took off, and I didn't even have time to go like, but what, that, the ego was gone.
Right.
It was like hyper vigilant focus back on what we need to do next. And like, what's the next hot handle for the day? And they kept coming all day,
That's so funny that it was so gnarly up there that even your ego was like, all right, I'm out.
It's like, if only all of us could just kind of, stop replaying the movie, and just move on to the next part of the movie, keep going. The movie's still going.
Well, that whole story to me was almost like the opposite of, a lot of people nowadays are talking about like imposter syndrome. Yep. People are doing what they do, and they're finding themselves in situations. I 20 plus years in the culinary industry, and there are still times where I'll get on a gig or a specific client or some sort of thing, and I'll look at that and I'll look around. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, are these people are these people going to figure out like that they actually have me here doing it? And then I realized they've hired me to do it because that's who I am and that's what I do. And so I've dealt with imposter syndrome a lot. And so the same sort of thing kind of shifted over in the land of photography. Because like I said, this started off with just having fun up on the mountain, going for some hikes. Oh, look, low fog. Oh, look, let me learn how to use not neutral density filters. Oh, long exposures, make the water, make the fog look like water, all this amazing stuff. Then all of a sudden I started meeting a couple of photographers here and there. I built the website. I started chatting with people, started growing a little bit of a following online. And next thing you know, I'm up 2 nights ago. It was our first low fog in a while, at least a few weeks, if not months. And I'm standing there with these dudes that have been doing this 10, 12, 15 years. And we're all there for each other, and we're all compliment and help each other out. All of a sudden I pull out one image from that day, and I got these people again that I had been following and looking up to, kind of asking me questions about it, or, where exactly were you, or what settings, and all this and that. And again, I start getting that feeling of like, wow, are they going to soon see that I'm actually not a photographer? And then it's like, dude, like you are. So here you are in this opposite realm, instead of actually being a climber and not feeling like you belong.
We're always students, even these pros that you respect, there's always something to learn. Like always, each new thing you're coming across is potentially going to get you twisted.
Right. I think the thing that goes through my head a lot is to just remain teachable.
I hold to that. I've kind of adopted this philosophy of, if you're knowing, you can't be learning. If you're knowing, there's no way you can be learning at the same time. So you have to park that wisdom, put it right here and say fresh new experience, even though it's got some similar attributes to some things I just went through, or I recognize that before. It's like, can I be with what's unfolding right now? And that's kind of
huge.
And then it's really not about the outcome as as like this activity, this vehicle I'm using right now in my doing, I need to bring my being to this. It's an opportunity for me to learn, grow, and expand. And that's really what it's all about. It's
Right.
not, I get it, yeah, participate in this activity, but if I'm just in the activity itself for that activity, I'm missing like the big picture.
Right.
There's an
Right.
opportunity to grow and expand and stretch myself. And at least I know for myself as a man, I'm forged in fire. I have to go climb mountains and put myself through crucibles that I was staying at my buddy's, got a place up in Kremlin, and this white squall, snowstorm blizzard's coming in, and I'm like, all right, it's coming in at like 1 o'clock today. I'm like, that's when I'm gonna go for a run. And I'm like, and I remember like I drove up to the gates, I'm gonna go up to the flat tops, and the gates are locked, like, don't go out here, not safe. And I'm like, okay, I'll
Yeah.
leave my car here, my water will be frozen, the gallon of water will be frozen when I get back, but I'm gonna go run in this. And as soon as I went through the gates, deep snow up to my belly button, and first thoughts are, what the fuck am I doing? Like, you numbskull. And most people, you see people going to work out and they're smiling, and like, that's not what it's about. Like, I go out and get my ass handed to me. I'm going out running this mountain in this blizzard, almost getting run over by a bunch of elk because I didn't hear him because of the snowstorm, and I'm listening to David Goggins, like motivating me. And,
Oh,
but the whole idea is that we go out and put ourselves in environments that are out at our edge,
right.
and if we stop, if I start going to the gym and I'm used to lifting 50-pound dumbbells and curling those guys, and now I start lifting 45s and I start lifting 40s, 30, I'm training myself to become weaker and softer in life. And so yes, it's comfy in your place in San Rafael there, and it's comfy in my home here in Boulder.
Yeah.
But it feels great to be in that home, cozy environment,
Right.
all our favorite things and access. But also we got to go out to those environments that are going to challenge you, to where like, I got to cook what? I got to make what for these guys?
Right.
Like, oh man, and I gotta deal with the local markets. Like, this is going to be a challenging day.
Right. That immediately brought me back to the quick conversation we had earlier in the traveling. And I had never traveled much growing up. We always took the annual trip down to Disneyland. I didn't do a lot of traveling as a kid, and then I started traveling when I got older, and then the work with the tour chef brought me on the road a lot. But I'd still traveled across the country. Everybody speaks English. I might have gone down to Mexico real quick, where I can speak enough Spanish to get me by. It still is our alphabet. You can kind of make sense of the signs and whatnot. But it was when I had this feeling that I just really get out of my comfort zone to grow that I started researching that trip to Thailand. And all of a sudden I realized, this is going to be a language that I completely don't know. It's going to be signage I'm not going to be able to read. It's across the world. It's completely out of my comfort zone. In fact, why don't I even go for longer than a week? Why don't I go for a month? And I got online and I just started looking at trips to and from. And I got to a point where the dates worked and the price dropped just enough for me to be able to afford it. And I clicked buy. And all of a sudden, it took me about 5 minutes to realize that I've just committed myself to going around across the world to a country I've never been to by myself, the most out of my comfort zone that I've ever been. And there are so many lessons that I learned in the first 48 hours there. Like, hey, you might
been right, no problem.
Right. You might want to get your very first guest night, your room, so you at least have a place. But instead, I'm, carrying my bags down the middle of Koh San Road in Bangkok, 5 o'clock in the morning and wonder what the hell I'm doing. But it was that bouncing around, a foreign country completely out of my element that just changed me completely, right? When I got home and caught up on my rest and the jet lag was gone, I saw everything with new eyes. My perspective had shifted. My problems weren't necessarily to the level of problems I thought they were anymore. And all I wanted at that point was to see more. I wanted to see more of the world. And so next thing you know, I headed over to Spain the next year. I went back to Hong Kong and Asia and, all these other places. And like I said earlier in this talk is every time I came home, home is different. Home is better. Home is more special. And my curiosity continues to grow.
Yeah, it's playing with that curiosity, Reino. It sounds like that's where you're most alive, and then like you said, you come back, like these filters have been removed. You can't unsee and unhear and unfeel what you've experienced.
Right.
So it's just like there's, I think that's my view. Even when I go climb mountains or do different types of challenges, it's really about, I'm trying to burn off whatever bullshit part of me doesn't get to go on to the next chapter of life. That's those self-imposed limiting beliefs. I'm trying to burn off that storyboard, and
Right.
I'm trying to, like, for me, a lot of people often have to have things happen to them, but it's what I hear from you and even myself is a degree of deliberateness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you had to go do that trip.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do all these experiences. You continue to put yourself in environments and with others that expose you.
Right, right. And kind of another level of that too is I found that there's a special quality. I have an amazing girlfriend in my life now. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary.
Congrats, brother.
We thank you. We've done some traveling together, and there's so many places on our list that we want to go to. And at the same time, we had talked about this early in our relationship. There is an aspect of individual travel that I have grown to appreciate in my life. And when I look back at those trips that I took on my own, they were those trips that brought me the most out of my comfort zone, right? If you and I were to go to explore Europe together, we might be on the train looking at the map together. We might be figuring out where our hotel is going to be. We're going to figure out where we want to go eat and all this and that. And there's just life all the way around us. And when I found myself in the middle of Chiang Mai, Thailand, again, with not necessarily anybody, in my immediate surroundings, I was forced to ask everybody, how do I get here? How do I get there? How do I get a scooter? Where do I ride the scooter to?
How to read the map yourself. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I definitely think that there are different aspects to traveling in groups, traveling solo. I know that for me, it was some solo travel that really kind of brought me outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, my experience, I was traveling with my ex-girlfriend at the time in Thailand, and yeah, I would leave and go to the beach, and be like, hey, I'll be back in, half hour, an hour, and I come back 2 hours later with like 20 new friends. And like, we're going to be traveling with these guys for 4 or 5 days. We're going here now to see these waterfalls, or have these experiences with the monkeys, and yeah, there's something about, when you have like that one-way ticket and you're like, well, we're not to be anywhere,
Right.
Yeah, there's something about, I definitely highly recommend anyone to travel in a non-traditional way, to, if you can, travel with a one-way ticket. If you can, travel by yourself.
Right.
I in my younger years, I was kind of back-to-back relationships and dating, and in recent years, I spent quite a bit of time by myself, my dog, just chilling. And it's been something I probably went kicking and screaming into, and at the same time been the best, most nurturing of my soul, and developing a relationship with myself and the world and the possibilities that are available to me, and how I show up with others has changed. So I think it's really wonderful, whether traveling outside, or I spent a year and I read 300 books in a year. I traveled inside as well too, and I think travel and going back to what we talked about earlier, it's like opportunities to expand ourselves, opportunities to just get beyond social conditioning, our upbringing. I know, thinking back to like even high school with you, I remember you as being someone of a really strong space holder for groups. And I'm not sure how that reflection hits you, but like I remember you as not just being the tall guy, and we just had a lot of very animated friends,
right.
very charismatic, and it was just like, I'm just gonna let these guys just talk because they got to talk.
Yeah.
And there's a way about you that has still come forth through life, and then there's all these other attributes and ways of expressing that you gain from having these unique individuals in your life that taught you, reflected back to you, that this is also living inside you, and can be nurtured and given, and also can be developed.
Right.
So you and I have been very fortunate growing up in Marin back in the days. have a climate that was very, I know it's just a very potent environment. I mean, each of us had our own struggles and challenges
Yeah.
to live with and work through growing up. But it's interesting to see who you become as a man through many cycles of evolution and through many common pitfalls that you've fallen into, that I've fallen into, and that now, like, so curious about where you're going next, with not just with photography and chef work and this new girlfriend, but what does life seem to be telling you now? What's been being foreshadowed to you in your development, in your expression in the world, as because 50's coming, man.
It is, and how grateful I will be when it finally gets here, which is a different perspective as when you see it coming. But just to kind of tail off of what you were talking about, when you first started speaking just now, is it takes what it takes, right? It takes what it takes for us to get to where we're supposed to be. And when we talk about either like the individual travel, or we talk about the comfortability with being with self and that sort of thing, just going back to high school, I didn't realize at the time how much I depended on others and the way that others felt towards me. And it really kind of helped me develop a complex of acceptance, maybe doing what I felt would, get attention from people that I admired, or make me feel a part of a group, whether it's, the starting to drink at 12, buying up for seniors when I was a sophomore because I had the facial hair, all those things, just to kind of identify or find some sort of acceptance, right? I also knew how to hang out with the stoners. I played football, so I knew the jocks. I knew the guys that were smart in class. I always tried to be, nice to people for the most part, but it was a lot about just fitting in. And so I think what stuck with me for years out of that was just, again, aligning my life with what parallel I believed life was supposed to look like. Maybe getting into a relationship because I had this hole in my soul and just kind of felt like everybody's supposed to be in a relationship, keeping me in unhealthy relationships for longer than I was supposed to be in, or not necessarily being able to find my path. And it really took, sticking it out and finding my passion to find something that fed my soul. It really fed, heartbreak and being alone and hitting bottom before I was able to truly start looking from within and being reminded on a daily basis that the outside is never going to fix the inside, right? So where I'm at now is,
and I tried that one. I'm like, I gotta get that outside fixed.
right? No,
you have to fail it. You have to have it fail you. You have to, it's like I fought the good fight with that until finally it was like, oh, friends would describe me as like the Navy SEAL who's trading water with the anchor, and just let go of it and you'll stop drowning. It's like, no, fight the good fight, and then like surrender. Like that's it. That's the gateway. That's the path, is surrender. Like,
it's not giving up. It's not giving. Surrender is not giving up. It's just literally, like you're saying, letting go. When I first came into the rooms and I first got sober, people are always saying, let go and let God. And I was not a religious person per se. So when okay, whatever. But then all of a sudden I heard somebody one time say, let go or get dragged. Mm-hmm. And that was very visual for me. Yeah. Because now all of a sudden, when I'm being dragged through a pile of gravel and I'm getting scraped and bruised, I can look down and realize the only thing that's dragging me through this pile is the fact that I won't let go of this rope, and all I have to do is let go, and all of a sudden I'm okay.
My freaking monkey mind with that fruit.
The monkey mind, yeah, they grabbing into the coconut or whatever it is.
Can't let go. I already got my hand on.
Exactly, but I mean, I can't tell you how many examples I've had where people that I believed had the most amazing life experiences. Some that I actually got to work closely with, others that I watched from afar. I toured with Linkin Park, so I really got to know Linkin Park as a band and Chester Bennington as their frontman. I've coveted the career of Anthony Bourdain. Living in Berlin, I would cross paths with Robin Williams. All these people. Now, again, what do these people have in common? These lives that from the outside seem absolutely so amazing. And I don't need to get morbid in this interview to remind you of what inevitably happen to all three of those individuals. You know what I mean? So again, it's just this daily reminder that the outside's not going to fix the inside. And if I can figure out how to take care of this and go from here outwards,
Yes.
it really doesn't matter what exactly is happening as long as I'm present in the process and just detach from the result, right? And that's the reminder to me.
Yeah, one of my teachers shared with me detached compassion. Just have detached compassion for yourself and for others, meaning like don't pull somebody onto your roller coaster and don't get on theirs.
Right.
But have compassion, like
Right.
yeah, it's tricky.
Right. But it would go so far. I wanted to say it will go, but at this point, like it would go so far if we all could just learn that and just kind of move forward with compassion. And I think there's a good portion of us that could really benefit from listening and just kind of hearing what our fellow humans are saying, because once we don't feel like we're being heard, then the separation starts to come. And we're people of a tribe. I mean, we might have some individuality, we might, get lonely, or, some of us might be introvert and really kind of isolate. But for the most part, look what we accomplish when we're all together, right? Look what we accomplish when there's even just two of us, whether or not we're in a room together, whether or not we're talking thousands of miles apart online, and all the technology and capability that we have to connect. And if we just can have a genuine conversation where each of us walk away feeling heard, we feel like we got to share our ideas, we get things from the conversation. I think that's the reminder of how beautiful this world really is.
Yeah. Well, how would people get a hold of you, Reino? What would be the best way to like connect with you? I know through your photography,
right?
But also, are there any where can they peer in on you and your show?
Right.
Too, so they're
well,
not
I mentioned
in or yeah.
Right. Thank you. I mentioned earlier some of the photography stuff, but for the most part, a lot of it branches back to just my experiences as a whole. And so if you go to my website, reinocruz.com, again, that's REINOCRUZ.com, it's kind of my digital business card per se in regards to the experience I've had in the world as a chef. But I also like to write some blog entries there where I share some stories either from being on the road, my career as a chef, and that sort of thing. You can still find me at Instagram at Chef Reino Cruz, and also on Facebook, Chef Reino Cruz. And again, the photography stuff that I mentioned earlier, ReinoCruzPhotography.com, and also Reino Cruz Photography all over social media. And that's the best way to get in touch with me. And hopefully something you come across will inspire you, or at least create some sort of little light bulb to say, hey, I didn't know that before I logged on here.
Yeah, and for all you folks that like you've oversaturated and watched every possible Anthony Bourdain, now take over, jump in and start watching, learning about what Reino's up to in the world, because he has a very clean, pure heart and philosophy that it's going to be the best is yet to come. So
awesome. I'd love to believe so.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you, Reino, for being here with me and our audience, just sharing just from the heart and following your gut today on what's worth being evoked in our audience and in yourself. And yeah, just appreciate you, brother. So, and just want to thank everybody for listening in. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode. We'll have Reino back again, I'm sure. So,
cool.
But thank you, Reino, and thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you, brother.